welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Stephen Einstein. Thank y'all for joining me again today as we go through and we do today's daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. The last couple have definitely been an exploration of my own understandings of some things, and it's really been an interesting perspective to be kind of running down with. So I appreciate everyone following along with me. And I'm looking forward to see what today says, see what he follows up with for today, talking about immortality and things. So here we go. This will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning that this will be the first time that I hear or read the meditation right on this podcast with y'all. So you'll get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So here we go. September 19th reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. The mortal man lives in the time or world state of consciousness which begins and ends. The immortal man remains poised and steadfast under all changes, and the death of his body will not in any way interrupt the eternal consciousness in which he abides. Of such a one, it is said, he shall not taste of death, because he has stepped out of the stream of mortality and established himself in the abode of truth. Bodies, personalities, nations, and worlds pass away, but truth remains, and its glory, it's undimmed by time. The immortal man no longer identifies himself with the self-seeking forces of the personality, but has brought them into harmony with the causal energy and source of all things. With the causal energy and source of all things. That makes a little more sense. The immortal man lives in the cosmic or heaven state of consciousness, in which there is neither beginning nor end, but an eternal now. And this gives a little bit, so we're getting more defining information here, which I'm grateful for. This is building my understanding of what we're talking about too. So I really, I see what he's saying now, and I've been playing around with the thought in my head too. So it's very interesting. It's interesting because in my mind, what I want to do after reading this one is I want to present it in a certain way, in the sense of to not be as potentially dramatic, maybe, or as jarring as some might find it, and kind of package it differently. But I think I'm just gonna talk about exactly what he's talking about here, and just go off of that. So here we go. Let's go through this line by line. The mortal man lives in the time or world of state of consciousness, which begins and ends. Which this sounds self-explanatory, right? This sounds as a given understanding, but the reality of it is, there's a different way to live. It's a way to live on principle. It's a way to live in a steady, grounded way of life, and go through your experience of this physical world without attachment to it, and to align yourself with something different, which we'll go into later in this, I guess. The mortal man lives in the time or world state of consciousness which begins and ends. So we are subjected, if we are of this world, meaning that we are choosing to seek fulfillment from this physical world immediately around us, you're going to be subjected to everything in your immediate surroundings and everything governing those immediate surroundings. That includes the weather, that includes the government locally, federally, the state. That includes your neighbors, that includes your coworkers, that includes your boss's boss, the company you work for. So Your experience will be subjective on a day-to-day basis to be different every single day. You will be going through emotional highs, through emotional lows, through this whirlwind of things that continue to take place because your life is based on the circumstances you find yourself in. That's the mortal part of us being wrapped up in the immediate world around us. He goes on now to say the immortal man remains poised and steadfast under all changes. And the death of his body will not in any way interrupt the eternal consciousness in which he abides. So he's talking about a separation, a disconnection from our bodies and the physical world, and understand we're a spiritual being that is connected to a physical body and a brain. Then that is running around having a physical experience. But the reality of it is, we are governed, our spirit, and the embodying force that's telling the brain what to do and telling the body what to do is separate. That is who we are. That energy. And when we base that, when we realize that, and then we decide to act aligning to God or a Christ-like ideal, or a whatever ideal you want to call it, you want to have or call or say or align yourself with, right? Those are the eternal consciousness that he's talking about. We're able to remain poised and steadfast under all changes because our behavior isn't dictated by the circumstances we're in. Our beliefs are not dictated by the circumstances we're in. Nothing is dictated by what's going on in this physical world, which is a pretty amazing thing when you think about it. To be able to have that clarity of mind, to be able to have that understanding and that type of life is such a blessing. And when he says here, like, this is the part that I was going to try to package up in a different way, and I'll present both of them because both are valid. The death of his body will not in any way interrupt the eternal consciousness in which he abides. So I was going to present this in a way like whatever happens to our physical body, we still can remain in the grounded in principle and aligned with this power, which is true. That is one understanding that comes from that sentence. But what he's really saying is the spirit of humanity, the spirit of the human being, our spirit is separate. When we align ourselves like this, when we choose to follow this path, we become aligned with this power in this universe, this God figure, is God energy, source, creator, nature, again, whatever have you. And that energy remains even after the death of a physical body. That alignment, we allow our bodies to just have their natural course, whatever that may look like. Because at the end of the day, our spirit will continue to live wherever that is, and wherever it without in that alignment with the eternal consciousness, which is a pretty mind-bending thing to wrap your head around. Goes on here to say, of such a one is said, he shall not taste death, because he has stepped out of the stream of mortality and established himself in the abode of truth. Again, when we're grounded in truth and love and the understanding of we're a spiritual being and the spiritual way of living, we're grounded in the abode of truth. Or established himself in the abode of truth. We're stepped out of the stream of mortality. We understand all of this is temporary. All of it could be gone tomorrow. Absolutely everything. There is no legacy anymore. With the push of a button, nations are wiped out these days. Or could be. That's of our own doing. Something an asteroid, meteor, all these other things that people always talk about. So many options for the destruction of us, for the destruction of this physical world to be wiped out. But as he said here, of one that is aligned with truth, he shall not taste death, because he has stepped out of the stream of mortality. My fulfillment, my life does not depend on these external things anymore, on these physical things, material things anymore. To give me fulfillment, to give me purpose. What an amazing thing that is. What a blessing that is. Bodies, personalities, nations, and worlds pass away, but truth remains and its glory undimmed by time. And isn't that true? We talk about it all the time on this podcast. These spiritual principles, these truths, love, these things are constantly being rediscovered. Constantly. Those always will remain. We will always find them because we're drawn to them. That is the way of living. Those are the principles. That is the truths we seek as human beings. Everything else is a temporary placeholder. So our bodies, our personalities, nations, and worlds pass away. Remember, all of that's temporary. Our personality, that changes over time. Our bodies change over time. The nations change over time. Worlds pass away. I agree. But the truth will always remain. The immortal man who no longer identifies himself with the the immortal man who no longer identifies himself with the self-seeking forces of the personality, but has brought them into harmony with the casual, that is not the word, causal energy and source of all things. Wow, that one's hard for me to say. I apologize. The immortal man no longer identifies himself with the self-seeking forces of the personality, because that's really the truth. We define ourselves by our personality. People might not like that, but our personality is really just kind of self-centeredness. Like, I'm like this. I want to be like this. This is how I behave. That's just selfish. We cling to that for self-identification and self-defining moments and things. When in reality, there's no reason to. But that's all we know. Who would we be without being me? I need to be me. I need to be unique. I need to be special. I need to be all of these things. So I matter in a world that can be gone tomorrow. I don't know the Fight Club quote, but it's kind of similar to that. Not as nihilistic, though. Then the second half of that, again, he has brought them into harmony with the causal energy and source of all things. Causal energy. That's what we're doing. That's what people call God. That's what people call, again, all those names I always list: source, creator, nature, society. Society can be wiped out. So that's a hard one for some people to wrap their minds around, but it can work with anything but the very large grand picture things. Causal energy and source of all things. That's where we find immortality. That's where we find peace. That's where we find serenity. That's where we find steadiness and strength. And now the end closing statement here: the immortal man lives in the cosmic or heaven state of consciousness, in which there is neither a beginning nor end, but an eternal now. Again, now is the intersection of this physical world with this spiritual realm, as some would call it, the spiritual world. And when we live according to these things, when we live according to spiritual principle, discipline, and virtue, we're able to actually be present with these things. We'll be able to be present in the eternal now, which is pretty amazing. We almost remove ourselves from time and the physical plane of this world, and we're just present in exactly what we're doing, where we're at. It's pretty amazing. So, all right, these are some pretty big picture, big idea ones last couple of days, and I'm liking them. We don't get many like this, so I am enjoying them. I hope everyone else is too. So thank you all for joining me again though tonight, and I'll be back again for tomorrow. So until next time, thanks.